Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Skull Session Recruiting Podcast, brought to you by BuckeyeHuddle.com. I am Marc Givler. I am joined today by Jared Luginbill of Prep Redzone, Ohio. Jared covers high school football in the state of Ohio, recruiting, evaluates Ohio high school football prospects. We were both in Stark County this past weekend at the Ohio High School Football State Championships. Saw all 7 games. We're going to talk today a little bit about some of the top guys from the state championships, guys Ohio State's looking at, and then we'll dive into a few other things within the state of Ohio. So it's going to kind of be an Ohio-centric episode of the podcast. First of all, Jared, thanks for being here. Let's kind of dive right into it. We saw about 4 guys that Ohio State's really heavily recruiting over the weekend. We'll talk about the first guy because it's easy. It was the first game or the first guy of the 4 to play, and that was a Springfield junior corner Aaron Scott. Lakewood State did beat Springfield in the Division I state championship game. But your thoughts on Aaron Scott, both from the weekend and any other time you've seen him, and kind of do you feel he's a guy? Obviously, he's got the Ohio State offer. Do you feel he's one of those top juniors in Ohio?
Yeah, we definitely have him towards the top of our rankings. We have him as the second top to top defensive back in Ohio to Bryce West, who's also obviously an Ohio State target. But just a long kid, 6'1", little slender at this point, but that's not a concern. But just super athletic, has a great closing speed. So he's able to make plays on the ball, just does a great job athletically of competing, and just a kid that sees that talent every day in practice. And so, you worry about some kids with transition to high level elite competition, but, he's a kid that's seen D1 receivers like Anthony Brown, who's headed to Kentucky, Sean Thickpin headed to Bowling Green every day in practice. And so when you see that kind of competition, it's not an eye-opener when you see other kids who play at that same level. And so kid I really like, a kid that is like I said, long, athletic. And, that's really the trend these days with defensive backs is height and length and ability to run. And so he checks all of those boxes.
Yeah, I've always been impressed with Aaron. So he camped at Ohio State over the summer, and he had a wrist injury. And so his whole wrist, basically camped like a club hand. He had one hand basically, and earned an offer through that camp performance. Was really tremendous that day. And you appreciate the competitive nature he has. I'm very, very high on him in Ohio's 24 class. We may get into a little bit of that later, but I thought it was not the greatest game for me to showcase him playing against St. Ed's. They wanted to kind of ground and pound behind that line, but I thought he made a few really nice tackles out there on the perimeter. He's a physical, competitive kid.
Yeah, he definitely was a willing tackler. He is good at playing downhill into the run schemes when teams want to run it to the outside. And so, like I said, there wasn't a whole lot there in the pass defense game for that particular game. But people, high level coaches, and schools like Ohio State and the others recruiting want to see that willingness to come up and tackle as well. And so, like you said, I think he did a great job of displaying that. And one thing I like about Coach Douglas at Springfield's kids is they always play with a little bit of an edge, even at camps, even when it's shorts and pads, they're competing out there. And so it's kind of ingrained in his kids. And I think that's something that, when teams come through or when colleges come through Springfield, I think they appreciate.
Yeah. So it was good for me. His stock, I saw him against Wayne early in the season, which was a good game to showcase. He played a tremendous game that night. So I was already kind of able to see him against a team that likes to throw it a little bit more than St. Ed's does. And so I had already got a really good evaluation there. So I was already sold, but nothing over the weekend that would have really changed my opinion there. So the other three guys are all on the same team as far as like Ohio State interest from the state championships. Glenville finally breaks through. They win their first state championship. Ted Ginn Sr. gets his first state championship, which for me was like at the highlight moment of the weekend. I just thought that was a really cool thing, watching him finally break through. He's had a couple of heartbreakers over the years. 26-6, I think, was the final there against Wyoming. They controlled the game pretty well. Three kids at Glenville. We'll start with the guy that's committed to Ohio State. Arvell Reese, big linebacker, forced a couple turnovers, had a strip that was recovered by a teammate, also had an interception towards the end of the first half that kind of kept Wyoming out of the end zone there at the end of the half. So a couple of big momentum changing plays. What were your impressions of Arvell and just kind of where you see him in the class as far as the Ohio 2023 class? Is he where do you have him ranked within Ohio, and just your thoughts on him as a player?
Yeah, we have Arvell ranked in the top 5, I believe. I don't have my rankings for the 23 in front of me, but excellent player. He's a kid that, when you look at linebackers / edge guys that are his size, you don't expect them to run like he runs. He's 6'4", 220 pounds. And frankly, he runs like somebody who's 6 foot, 180 pounds. Explosive, twitchy comes to mind. Just a kid that really explodes. And sometimes when you see kids that are as athletic as he is, and even at his size, sometimes they can be a little more. They just rely on their athleticism to make the plays. Arvell is extremely physical. He's a guy that's going to come in my mind, and compete right away. He probably won't be in the starting lineup as a freshman, but I expect him to play special teams. I expect him to come in and start working his way onto the field gradually, immediately, just because of that size and that physicality. He's a guy that will be able to contribute on a kickoff unit or something, just because of his ability to run and tackle and be physical. As far as his game goes, obviously you said game-changing plays, strip, fumble, forced fumble. Obviously had the interception. He's aware, he's engaged, and he's physical and he's fast. He's the prototypical kid that you look at him and you say, that's an Ohio State kid. That's a kid who is going to project to the highest levels of college football. And really he blew up within the last year. I mean, last offseason, he started coming onto people's radars. But really, it wasn't until the end of this last summer where, he really caught on and started picking up major offers other than Ohio State. And so he just, that length is in athleticism combo is uncanny, and it's gonna make him a high-end prospect even at the college level.
Yeah, Kevin Noon and I, and Kevin's producing this for us, saw Arvell at the Best in the Midwest combine in Indianapolis back in the winter, and he was by far the best prospect there. And Bryce West was there, but I thought Arvell was far and away the best prospect there. And he jumps out at you physically immediately. And he's one of those kids, like, you don't really like root for or against kids necessarily, but like there's sometimes you see a kid and you're like, physically you see him and you're like, oh my God, please be as good of a football player as you look like you should be. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you always,
Yes.
like, when you see a kid like that and you're like, please be what I think you are. and he is. I would be curious to get your thoughts on this, because I've flip-flopped a little bit on this recently. What do you think he is at Ohio State? Do you think he's a Mike? Do you think he's an edge? How do you see kind of his development going at the next level?
He's so athletically gifted that, I don't want to cop out and say he can play both. I would say, when you look at terms of what you're projecting a player to, you look to it as a ceiling. And I think his most valuable uh, position and where he can help the most will be at the edge. I think physically he could play the Mike linebacker, but um, we look back and we talk about game changing plays. While a Mike linebacker can do that from time to time, you're more often going to see it at the edge position where it could be a strip sack. It could be an interception where they drop back into the flats or they, come up and, catch a screen ball, just that athleticism where they can really come off that edge and make plays. And, that length that he has, would even more lead me to view him as an edge player. Now, technique wise, I don't know how much there is there right now of pass rush skill, but when you're athletic as he is and you have that size, because I expect him, at 220 now, I expect him to fill out to 250, 255, and you have 6'4", 250, 255 coming off that edge, screaming at a quarterback, and that looks pretty good. So that would be my opinion. But yeah, he could play downhill enough, and he's physical enough to play middle linebacker. I just think he shows the most upside at Ohio State for their defense at pressuring the quarterback, and I'm sure Knowles would be ecstatic to get him in that position.
So I started from a position of he's definitely going to be an edge when I first saw him. And like you, I see him playing at 250 plus. I don't know if you covered this guy in high school, but Frank Clark came out of Glenville.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, he's playing in the NFL now. He's the same size that Frank Clark was in high school. And they have similar builds. And so I kind of see some of that in him. I also see a little bit of Baron Browning in him. And I was kicking and screaming for like 3 years at Ohio, maybe all that Baron Browning was being wasted at Mike, that he was like an elite blitz. He's like their best blitzer. He could come off the edge. And sure enough, he goes to Denver, probably gets drafted a couple rounds too late, and he's having a good start to his NFL career as more of an edge player. That being said, Arvell has kind of proven to me that he could play Mike. I think some of the plays he made on Saturday night, going sideline to sideline, were super impressive. I know the old school Mike is kind of going out of style. You're really trying to find one or two guys that can be 3 down linebackers. So guys with Arvell's size and athleticism that can play in the middle of the field, and you don't have to take them off the field in passing situations. They don't turn into liabilities. It's intriguing. I don't know. I'm more torn on this than I thought I would be. Like I said, I was initially like edge. And I think in a perfect world would put him at the edge, especially with what Ohio State's trying to do right now. They're trying to play this kind of jack position where they stand up some of their pass rushers. And boy, does Arvell fit that. So we'll see. My instinct is that he's going to start at linebacker though, because here's the weird thing. It's the only linebacker in their class. And it's probably going to be the only linebacker in this class. So unless they're able to, hit the portal here a little bit or do something else, I feel like the need is probably going to be there for him to come in and play linebacker. And then we kind of see where it goes from there. Now, that being said, I said this a little bit about Sonny Styles too. I think you would almost be doing Arvell a disservice if you just told him, well, you're a defensive end, or, well, you're a Mike linebacker. I really think he's a guy you want to move around the front seven a little bit and let him create some chaos, whether that's as an edge rusher or whether that's, as a blitz, a gap blitzing middle linebacker. I think there's a lot of things he can do where you kind of want to let him be versatile, but that's going to be an interesting one for me. I think he's the most underrated player in Ohio State's class. I think he's the most underrated from not from just ranking standpoint, but from like fan perception, like excitement level type thing. He's not a guy that people on our site go, "Oh yeah, I can't wait to get for Arvell Reese to get here." Well, you should be waiting for Arvell Reese to get here.
Right.
But
yeah, he like I said, I mean, he's not one of those kids that we've known about since his freshman year. I mean, he's really been off the radar and up until, as you said, the best of the Midwest camp was really where things took off for him, and and so I think when there's not that constant hype of year after year leading up to that senior year, and people seeing film and stuff that would get them excited, that but I agree, I agree on the disservice of there's no reason to put him at this time. Let him grow and develop naturally, and see where he fits best. I think I would lean to starting on that edge, but if the quickest route to get on field is Mike linebacker, and then he eats himself into an edge position, so be it. It's not, do what you can to maximize the player's best abilities, and that's only going to help the player. It's only going to help you as a team.
Yeah, I think he's pretty low risk as a prospect because, kind of like you said, if it doesn't work at linebacker, just move him down to defensive end. I don't think. I think he's one of their safest bets in this class. I really do. Obviously, Glenville's got more than just Arvell. They've got a lot of guys. But Ohio State specifically has offered 2 junior prospects, 2024 class. Bryce West. We can talk about. Start with Bryce just because we've already mentioned him a couple of times. You guys, you said you have Bryce, the number 1 junior.
You have him the second overall player, second defensive, or first defensive back, I should say. Bryce isn't quite as long as Aaron Scott. He's a little bit different of a player. He's more physical. He's more looking to he's the kind of kid that's going to jam receivers at the line. He's going to try to bully. He's going to play bully ball and really try to throw wide receivers off, get in their heads. He wants to come up and lay the wood in both the passing game and the rushing game. He had 13 tackles, I want to say, was the number he had in the state championship game. So he was flying all over. And 13's actually, it's quite a lot for a cornerback where they're stationed on one side of the field, and you could run away from them from time to time. So it kind of goes to show his pursuit and just his want to get to the ball in every play. And so that's kind of where I see him as. I see him a little less as just a flat out cover guy and more, I hate to bring it up, but like an Antoine Winfield type. Like he's a guy that's going to cover.
That's a big one for Ohio State fans.
Absolutely. He's going to come up and he's going to, like I say, he's going to bully ball. He's going to put his hands on you. He's going to try to get into your grill, and he's going to try to slow you down. And then if you're running the ball, he's going to go through you, and he's going to make that tackle as well. And so I just love his demeanor. I love kids that play with a little bit of an edge, and I think in this day of age, it's happening a lot less, than it used to, where kids just want to compete and they just want to beat you down. Bryce is that kind of kid. And so, he's going to be a good get for whoever gets him. And I don't mean to play down his coverage skills because they're A1 obviously as well. But, I like that competitive mean streak and knows still how to control his motions and all of that. It's not going off the deep edge. It's just a controlled physical bulldog mentality, and I love what I've seen from Bryce.
Yeah, so I think this is going to be the big debate. Maybe in Ohio's 2024 class is Aaron Scott versus Bryce West as the top defensive back, and perhaps maybe even the top prospect. I think they'll both be in the discussion the whole way.
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't do this because it's like so spoiler. This is a bad business decision I'm about to make, but I'm going to have Aaron Scott ahead of Bryce, and it's going to be very similar, I think, to how you guys have it, where I think they're both going to be in the same range and they're both going to be in the top 5 and everything else. But I actually have Scott one, and that's going to be, I think, my favorite part of the next year is probably watching that back and forth because I'm not married to a position on that yet. Obviously, these guys have a lot of time left. I'm having a hard time getting away from the 6'1" length and cover skills that Aaron brings, but Bryce is tremendous. And I agree with you on his demeanor. I love his demeanor. I love the way he plays the game. I think he's one of those guys who'll get every ounce of whatever he's supposed to get out of that body, he's going to get. Reminds me a little bit of Duran Grant coming out of St. Vincent St. Mary several years ago, played at Ohio State. I think they have similar body types. Duran loved to play press, loved to be physical. That's maybe not a 4'3" guy, maybe not 6'1", but just incredibly effective. And all the intangibles are there, everything else. And I had Duran very, very high in Ohio when he was coming out. So I'll obviously have Bryce very high as well. So that's going to be interesting to me is just that little thing because they are, as you mentioned, they are different players. They are very different. So it's tough. It's almost like you're not comparing two guys at the same position. Almost it's really kind of difficult. It's almost like comparing, a linebacker and a defensive lineman or something. Like they're really different players. Maybe Bryce could be a slot guy.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that. I mean, he doesn't have, like we said, the length that you maybe typically look for on the outside, but I mean, that physical style play and just that, what a slot's looking to do, that would be a good marriage there, I think. But honestly, I mean, I think he could play either. We obviously, we have them ranked 2 and 3 overall, so we're right there with you that they're, ceiling and talent wise, they're very comparable, just different styles of play and kind of, maybe what your flavor is.
The last guy we're going to talk about from the state championship weekend, this was a real pleasant surprise for me. Deamarian Whitten, 6'3.5", maybe 6'4", about 215 maybe right now. Played a lot of defensive end on Saturday night. Plays a lot of receiver for Glenville, Ohio State, and I think most schools are recruiting him as a tight end, kind of a flex guy. Your thoughts on Deamarian from what you've seen so far? Obviously had a nice game on Saturday.
Yeah, so I saw obviously nice game on Saturday, had a few catches, really nice play where did the head tap, grabbed it over top of the defender and brought it down. I first saw him last year in camps coming off of his sophomore season. Off his freshman season. I saw him in Cincinnati, but has had that long physical build. And he's a kid that is an elite big skill player. And I kind of go back to that where, you think when you see that kid not in pads, but that kid that kid is an Ohio State kid. That kid is an Alabama kid. That kid that's what Deamarian is. He is he's an elite in many different ways. So what I mean by that is athletically, he can get off the line and get a great clean release at like you said, 6'3", 6'4", 215 pounds. He runs like a receiver. So in his routes, he's getting crisp breaks. He's getting separation. When it comes to the ball in the air, great body control, great high point ball skills. You just kind of look at him and he really is the kind of kid. He checks all the boxes. Like, he's a kid that, I think part of the problem with Ohio is we don't have spring football and we don't have 7-on-7. With 7-on-7, some, argue about, but he hasn't had that exposure that the kids in the South get. I think if he did, I think he'd be a top 20, 25 player in the country in his class. I would have him ranked as the highest player in Ohio's class, for that class, based as far as offensively goes, offensive skill. He just he's so good. I was listening to one of his coaches talk, and Deamarian honestly doesn't understand how good he is. When he went out and they needed a kicker, he volunteered to kick off. And if you notice, he did the kickoffs and he would kick it down to the 15, 10 maybe, did that old style toe kick. But the fact that he could just step in and do that, the fact that he could punt, he's their punter. A lot of people don't know this, but don't be surprised if next year he's playing quarterback for Glenville.
Stay tuned.
He actually has played quarterback in the past, and that was really his position coming into high school. And they are looking at that. And I'm very interested to see it, but I'm also glad he's gotten a chance to grow into this position of athlete, hybrid, tight end hybrid type, because I would hate for him to have gone into quarterback and kind of got lost in that. But we've all seen his talent and ability to just go make plays, honestly, whether it be a wide receiver screen he takes for 90 yards, whether it be, the jump ball in the end zone, bringing it down. He is a kid that I'm sure Ohio State is drooling at the mouth to get in their program, because he's, in my opinion, he could be as good as any skill player in the country. And you look at that tight end hybrid position, those are the players where you find the most mismatches. You'll find wide receivers that are smaller, but they aren't the mismatch against the bigger guys that can be physical with them. You find the big guys, but they can't run with the smaller guys. So Deamarian can do it all. So sorry, that was a long-winded answer, but
that was good. You're hey, this is the place to do it. I mean, there was a little Brock Bowers there to his game in terms of catch and run, ability to line up outside. He did some great things at defensive end in that game.
Mm-hmm.
I'd probably put him on offense. I don't know that he's, I'd want him to probably be a little bit taller to play out on the edge like that. But I mean, he did some things coming off the edge of defensive end that was impressive. This was the first time I had seen him in a while. It was the first time I'd seen him in pads, and just I didn't know what. I'd seen that he's having a great season. Great athlete. I know Ohio State really likes him, but that was pretty eye-opening for me on Saturday night. I knew what to expect from the other three guys we've talked about, but Deamarian was tremendous. They're going to probably try to take two tight ends in the class, which I've been saying for years, and they just never do. but so we'll see. But that would be, if you could get anything close to a 6'5", 6'6" inline guy to go with him, that would be one heck of a tandem there for them as they try and rebuild their tight end room here. But I'm with you to the extent that he was an absolute stud on Saturday. And then I just read something earlier today. I guess he plays basketball. Apparently they played on it was either Monday or Tuesday night. And so he's like 48 hours off the football field, hasn't practiced with the basketball team yet, probably still sore from the state championship game, playing both ways. And I guess he like dropped 15 points and was like the best player on the floor. So I was just like, holy God. So I might have to go up there and watch them play basketball this year, but very impressive. Definitely injected himself into my, as I sit here and think who are the top, few players in Ohio in 2024, he's injected himself into that conversation for me, from what I saw on Saturday.
And honestly, I wouldn't be opposed to even viewing him as a wide receiver, a big wide receiver. I mean, you look like a Keenan Allen in the NFL. I'm not saying he's Keenan Allen but he can run like a wide receiver. And I don't think it has to be the thought that he has to be a tight end, because at 215 or so, he might put on another 20 pounds. He's never going to be an inline blocker type. No. He's going to be more your outside, but I think he's a guy athletically that you're going to want to move around. You're not going to just line him up in one position. The sky's the limit for him.
And that was admittedly one of my questions going into Saturday, was like, I know he's not he's not 6'5" and a half, 255, 26. That's not going to be his future. Okay. And so as we just kind of talked about with Arvell, where it's like, he's kind of low risk because, he could just outgrow and you move him to D-line, defensive end. I don't like Deamarian's not a guy like he's going to he had to show me that he can play out in space, because that's where he's going to have to make his money. He's not going to, as you said, Arvell could eat his way to defensive end. He's not gonna be able to eat his way, into being, like a Jeff Hireman or a Nick Vanette or something. Some of these guys we've seen come out of Ohio State over the years as inline blockers. He's not going to be able to do that. So I had to see his feet, how he moved, just skill wise out, and better than I would have ever imagined. Just was really impressive. So that'll be another interesting one. That's another guy probably a lot of people aren't really excited about right now. A lot of talk about some of these other guys that Ohio State's offered, but this kid's really good.
Absolutely.
So, okay, we'll wrap this up here in a couple minutes, but just kind of my last thing I wanted to go over. What is your initial thought here on the Ohio 2024 class? Is it a strong class? Is it an average class? Is it a weaker class? Knowing, of course, we have 12 more months. There are guys we're probably not talking about right now as high-level guys that we'll see in the spring or even next summer. But just your initial impressions, I guess, on the strength of Ohio's 24 class.
Yeah, so, I feel like it's a lot deeper than some of the more recent classes. I'm not sure if the high-end talent is quite there. But as you said, we have another year to develop and to grow into, what they're going to be. But Luke Hamilton's a guy that I've liked a while, who's, went the other direction recently. Ben Roebuck, we saw him in the state finals game, who is a kid that I really like. I don't know if he'll pull that Ohio State offer or not, but he's a really good looking tackle, and one I've liked for a while. And then there's kids like TJ Engelman, who's down in Cincinnati, originally committed to Georgia Tech, decommitted from there, and is kind of weighing his options at this point, but super athletic, kind of just freakish, line him up at running back. He can split out a receiver. He's kind of a do-it-all, type on offense. But you also have guys then like Gavin Grover out of Olentangy, who's getting Big Ten interest as a tight end, big 6'6", 220-pound kid who's more of your traditional tight end, but it looks really good. A kid like Sam Williams-Dixon out of West Holmes, who is down at Ohio State camp. I know they were taking a look at him that day, but he has offers from Penn State and some other Big Ten schools. And so, like I said, there's, maybe not that top 5 high-end talent, but there's kids down all the way, in our top 20. Carson Hobbs, who was originally committed to South Carolina, decommitted from there and immediately got an offer from Notre Dame and committed within a few days and will be headed to South Bend. So just a lot of talent, kids that are going to be able to play Power 5 ball, maybe not future All-American type kids, but kids that are going to be solid starters at the schools that they go to. And who knows? You have Austin Arvell that's committed to Ohio State. I knew him after his sophomore year, going into his junior year. Hadn't talked to any schools, let alone Power 5s. And after his junior season, had racked up offers from Ohio State and Michigan State, and I want to say Alabama offered him as well. And so,
Notre Dame did. I know Alabama did.
Yes, correct. Yep. And so, it's just that, there's kids that are, maybe a little bit off the radar because, people didn't see them live or, whatever, maybe their scheme didn't put them in the best position to produce. And, there's just a lot of reasons why kids stay under the radar. And so, it's, there's a lot of kids, a Dalen Wilkins from Northmont is a perfect example. 6'3", 220 pounds. He's a really good player. He's not going to play at Ohio State or Notre Dame, but he's going to play at a Power 5 school, and I think he's going to be a pretty good player. And so, I really like the class. I think it's really deep, and I'm just excited to see some of these kids grow and develop.
Yeah, that's pretty much my assessment of the class so far as well. I've made the comment on our site a few times where I don't. And I reserve the right to change my mind. I think there's a couple guys who could maybe fit the physical profile and catapult themselves into this territory I'm about to talk about. But I, to this point, have not seen like Paris Johnson, Jack Sawyer, like top 10 national recruit, maybe even arguably number 1 player in the country type player, like those guys were coming out of high school. There are a couple kids who I think could make a push to 5-star status, just based on their physical profiles and just continuing to improve. But if you look back at like 2020, the Paris Johnson class in Ohio, I'm sorry, it was terrible. It was Paris Johnson, and then it just off the cliff. You couldn't even get into the top, normally the top 4 or 5 guys should be really, really good. That year it was okay, Paris is 1. I got to put somebody at 2. I got to put somebody at 3, but I'm not really feeling great about this. That's not the case in this class. I think it's very strong in the top 10. Again, do I see a Paris Johnson 5-star premium position, top 10 player in the country? Not yet. Probably not at this point. Usually those guys show themselves pretty early. But I see a lot of guys that if you told me, if someone at one of the networks told me hey, we're going to put this guy in the top 50, the top 75, top 100, I'd be, yeah, sure. The guys we just talked about for sure. I really like Garrett Stover. I think he's a really, really good fit for the modern defense, what teams are looking for at linebacker. I love Aaron Scott. I really high on Deamarian Whitten now. Bryce West. But so I think the strength of the class is its depth, top 10 to 15, I think we're going to see better players, from 6 to 15 in Ohio. I think we're going to see better players in that range than we've seen in a number of recent classes. That's kind of my take on the class so far. Want to wrap this up.
Yep.
You know, who are you like your top 2 or 3 guys right now? I know it's early and we grant you the right to change your mind in the next 12 months, but kind of who are 2 or 3 that kind of jump out to you right now?
For the 24 class?
Yeah, no, yes, sorry.
So I'm going to go back to Bryce West again. I love that edge. I think you can be a great athlete. I think you can be, look like a Greek goddess. But if you don't have that edge and you don't have that just competitive spirit, and I think it's especially important at the defensive back position where you got to have a short memory and just willingness to just want to line up and win every rep. I think he fits that. Ben Roebuck. I don't have, what we do with our rankings is more collaborative. I probably myself would have him a little higher ranked. We have him at 6 right now. I like Luke a lot, Luke Hamilton, but Ben is a kid that I think could be a future Sunday guy. I just have a feeling he's not going to end up at Ohio State, and that's okay. Only so many kids can. But I think he's going to find his way to a Power 5 school, and he's going to change his body type a little bit. He's going to get stronger, and he doesn't get enough credit for his physical ability. I was watching him do pregame calisthenics, and he was doing toe to hand touches with kicks at 6'7", 320 pounds. He moves like an athlete, and I really have a high opinion of him. So again, that could change. Like I said, I like Luke a lot, but and Aaron Scott obviously is right there as well. But those would probably be, along with Deamarian, would be my core of who I think are going to be elite Power 5s.
Yeah, going to be interesting to see how things shake out. There's a lot of good offensive linemen, I think, in the class.
Yep.
Some of them are. It's kind of the age old of battle with some of these guys. It's like how much left is there developmentally for a Luke Hamilton versus, say, like one of the Armstrong twins. Like so you're trying to make, you're almost gambling a little bit as far as like, okay, how much better can the Armstrong twins get, and how much better do I think they're going to get? How much room do I think there's left there to develop? And now I've got to kind of project. I mean, I don't think you're projecting much on someone like Bryce West, someone like even like a Jordan Marshall. I don't think you have to do much projection. I think those guys are pretty safe in what they are. But the lineman is even the college coaching staffs, their O-line evaluation percentages. I mean, you're flipping a coin on, even at Ohio State or Michigan or Notre Dame, like half of these linemen are not going to play for you. And so that's always a tough one. So I think that's going to be my big thing in the 24. One of my big things in the 24 class is going to be the development of these offensive linemen, because there are 5 or 6 that I think have a lot of potential.
Yeah, the Armstrong twins, athletically, they fit that profile 100%. And at this point, really, it's just a matter of adding weight and strength. And are they going to be the kids that you have to be waking up at 3 a.m. to drink protein shakes and eating peanut butter sandwiches just to keep that weight on? Or are they going to naturally be able to keep and carry that weight? And so, and that's one of those positions where they wait as long as possible. And, that was why with Luke, I don't want to say, I don't know what happened with him on his visits or anything, but it's not abnormal for them to wait on those offensive linemen to give those scholarships out, because they are more of a projection many times. So, but very interested to see how things work out for sure.
Yeah, the season just ended. I'm already waiting for camps and stuff to start rolling back around so we can get another look at these guys. But
For sure.
Jared, thank you so much for doing this. We respect your work over there at Prep Redzone, Ohio. It's good seeing you over the weekend. We see each other on the road quite a bit, so we'll see you soon. I'm sure it's something, maybe Best of the Midwest, maybe a camp or something here in the spring. But keep up the good work. Appreciate you stopping by, and just again, thanks for being here and hopping on for us.
Absolutely, anytime, Mark. I appreciate what you guys do, and it was always great seeing you out on the recruiting trail. So we will see you soon.
All right, and that'll do it for this episode, everyone. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Remember, it's a Skull Session Recruiting Podcast. You can find it on all of your podcast platforms, and also at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. And that is where you can download, watch, listen, whatever, however you choose to consume your podcast. So thanks everyone for listening, watching, and we will see you next time.